one of you were here in one of the earlier sessions. I'm personally so excited about this conversation because I've followed all of you for a while. I love all of the ways that you talk about food and nutrition and the brain and so many other things. But when we think about the word food, it's so often associated with a type of diet. And in the world we live in, diet is usually associated with weight loss and all these things, especially with the introduction of things like GLP-1s and all of that. So I want to know from you guys, Davinia, I want to start with you. How is your personal perception of food changing the way we look at diet?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me, and this is fabulous to be here. Look, I'm with over the moon. I wasn't it nice of Andrew Huberman to warm the audience up for us, bless him. What a nice guy. So for me, the word food for probably about 35 years just meant either a treat or just not even energy. I didn't see it as a fuel. It was just like something you indulged with or something you restricted just to lose weight. And I never thought of it as something that would ever affect my mood. I thought that was way out of the realms. I mean, I suppose most doctors have never really sort of acknowledged they got brain access up until recently. And it's like, no shit, Sherlock. You see a kid who has party food and you can see it react and we go, oh, look at them, they've gone a little bit crazy. But this happens constantly. And as soon as I realised that what I put in my body as food or even drink can alter my mental state, I thought, oh my God, we're onto something. I can control my mood and therefore my actions and therefore what I do with my day. So for me now, it's something that I control my brain with. And, of course, there's no perfect diet because we live in a society of overindulgence and advertising and everything. You want to see me up there grabbing everything. I love dopamine. But I just think the whole world is changing now. And we're starting to understand that maybe nature might have got it, Mother Nature got it right in the first place, and maybe big food didn't quite have the answers we were looking for. So yeah, I'm seeing it as a fuel and a tool.
Yeah, I think that's a great segue to you, Niall. Obviously, you've got some very strong opinions about what food looks like. So I'd love to know from you, what does diet mean to you?
When I was 19, I was so obsessed with optimizing in so many different ways. I was doing a vegan diet, and then I went to carnivore, and then I did animal-based, and I was trying so many different supplements as well, and wearing all these different wearables, and like Oura Ring, Whoop, and I felt like I was outsourcing basically all my health to these devices and all these supplements and things. And the way that I think about diet now is it's something that I can do every single day without even having to think about it. Because I think he agrees.
That was a lovely golden retriever at the front row here.
The way that I think about diet is something that can be sustainable. I can do it every single day without having to think about it. Whereas before I was thinking it was like this really complex thing, and I was trying to use foods in a certain way to achieve a goal. Whereas the reality is, my goal is just to be as healthy as possible every single day without even having to think about it, because that's what our ancestors have done for thousands of years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Max, I know you talk a lot about what specific foods do to us, the impact that they have on us. For you, what are some of the most valuable foods that we can eat for brain health specifically? But I'd be curious for you to take that elsewhere as well. What are the foods that we're missing out on because of perceived notions of them?
Yeah, well, I think just to set the stage for my answer to that question, I have been immersed in this subject for the better part of almost a decade and a half at this point. And when I first got started, I mean, my background was, I had always, I think a lot of bros in this room, it was an interest in bodybuilding, it was in body composition, as a high schooler, how to augment my strength and physique to be a little bit more confident, a little bit less insecure. And when my mom, at a very young age, started to display the earliest symptoms of what would ultimately be diagnosed as a rare form of dementia called Lewy body dementia, it sent my world into a tailspin. And having had this, I guess you could call it bias, we all have biases, right? For nutrition, that was the first place that I started to look. And in tandem with that sort of background interest, my maternal grandmother, so my mom's mom, was at the time that my mom had been diagnosed with this neurodegenerative complex, she was 30 years her senior and cognitively completely intact. So the working hypothesis that has guided my work over the past 15 years has been what shifted in between my grandmother's generation and my mom's generation that led to my mom developing this condition for which there is no cure, that my grandmother was seemingly impervious to. And when I got started, I'll tell you that you couldn't mention dementia and prevention in the same sentence, let alone the concept that food could have any impact whatsoever on brain health and brain function. And today it's something that we almost take for granted because so many of us are privy to the kinds of content that, that now seems to do really well on social media. But at the time, nobody was talking about this topic. So that kind of paved the way for me to begin this inquiry. And I'll say that, at the end of the day, it's ultimately not rocket science. Dietary pattern matters more than whether or not there's a blueberry or an avocado on your plate. You want to make sure that you're eating in a way that is going to give you the best chance for pristine metabolic health, strong and vigorous body composition, and that diet's going to look different depending on your preferences, your lifestyle, your background level of fitness, genetics, etc. But I would say that the most nutrient-dense foods, in my view, are a blend of animal source foods and plant foods. So I'm, as frequently as I get painted as being somehow carnivore adjacent, I'm not. I go to bat happily for both animal source foods and dark leafy greens, red meat in tandem. I think they can both peacefully coexist, and they both have unique benefits that they provide to the brain. So,
how do you respond when you acknowledge that we're privy to so much content out there in the world and feel like you get whiplash? One day it's one thing, the next day it's another thing. How do you navigate that world when people look to you and trust your opinion on what does work for your body?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen this industry rise and become the behemoth that it is today, and that's led to a co-evolution for me in my messaging. And I would say that these days it's very much it's very apropos of what is the focus of the first magazine of health. It's the sort of anti-optimization approach, where I think people, it's sometimes referred to as shiny object syndrome. People are frequently willing to be distracted by the endlessly complex protocol, the 15-step morning routine, the supplement regimen, the biohack, the wearable. And at the end of the day, I think health is a lot simpler than that. I think it comes down to the basics, but unfortunately the basics just don't sell as well as something that leads a person to believe that the answer is coming. Right? Like it's just going to be another round of podcasts or what have you. But I think true health comes from what we all kind of know to be true. It's showing up at the gym. It's eating a diet that revolves primarily around minimally processed foods. It's sleeping well. It's finding ways to mitigate stress. Those to me are the big levers.
Davinia, you're
Oh no, it's just like, I'm just thinking, oh God, but it's so boring, isn't it? You just want to go get the shiny stuff all the time like a magpie. But it's true because I love all like the gadgets and the gizmos, and we were just trying out a new bed upstairs. I thought, I've got to get this. It's around 25 grand or something. I'm like, okay, maybe I'll get a hot water bottle. But I mean, I love all the gadgets, but I mean, it's true, but you don't experience the gadgets as well unless the basics are done, right? And that like the basics are the boring stuff, but it's trying to implement them in a habit a day of distractions. I've got 4 kids, and I mean, exam season last week is just a joke. It's just high level stress. And life is very lifey. We all experience it 24/7. It's how to slot these ancient sort of ancestral habits, like going outside without a pair of shoes on in the absolute devastating rain in the north of England in February. That's bloody difficult. That's where the gadgets come in. You can ground on a mat or something like that. That for me, this is where this biohacking really comes in to help me roll back to the basics, which is a kind of ancestral living, because we're living in a complete like ancestral mismatch, aren't we? You know, I literally get up, put the kettle on, the TV's on, the news is on, and I'm shouting at kids to get downstairs in the car. It's not calm. I don't journal in the morning, I shout, and that's what happens, you know? It's just how it is, but it's working for me. Get the kids to school, albeit late, but I just need to understand that if the basics are right, nutrition like what you supplied is amazing, because I'm not going to be boiling organs and doing that. I'm not going to be doing that. But I can get it into the kids super quick, and it's taking the guilt out of it. No one's perfect. No one you see on Instagram is perfect. They're all having shit in the background. Just remember that. Take the facade off, because we're all just human beings trying to live in a very artificial life at 3 million miles an hour. And it's like we need to take a break and mock ourselves sometimes, because it is mental what's being sold upstairs. But I love it with a passion, and it is, you know, it's a dopamine here for this person, you know, free dopamine, love it.
Now, you kind of did a very interesting 180 in a sense of, you know, you were in this loop of like supplements and testing every gadget and working, and you said something interesting earlier of, you know, you kind of just stripped it all back. What was that like for you when you pretty much did return to an ancestral way of living?
Yeah, and for people that don't know, I was actually one of the first employees at Health, and my role in the company was the guinea pig. I was taking all these different supplements, and I was so obsessed with it. And the reality
You sounded disclaimer, yeah? Hey, just try this one.
Yeah.
Whoa.
I tried so many, but my gut health wasn't that great, and I couldn't figure out why I just wasn't feeling amazing. And then I think I just went through so much of that, it just got so complex. I even just deleted Instagram. I don't use it because I find it so anti-health. I feel like it actually just isn't great for my brain. And I found these timeless principles that I can practice. If someone came to me right now and said, I want to get healthier, I'm doing a standard diet and I maybe exercise like once a week or something, but I want to get healthier, what can I do? I would say, like, do not take any supplements, don't look for a Whoop, like, don't go for Aura, don't go for any gadget or wearable or anything. Look at the diet and the food that you're eating day to day, because I'm a really big believer, if you can sort your diet out, you will probably do 95% of your health. And then the supplements and the wearables and gadgets, blood tests, all these different trends and fads, like, maybe get you that like extra 3 to 5%. But what is it like? What is it? Is it worth it? Is it worth all that research and putting your head into it? And in my honest opinion, I've been so much happier just sort of blocking it all out. And the real principles that have changed my life is this relationship, this deep connection to where my food comes from. And I'm so fortunate where I live that I've got this farm called Floorhatch that are like 20 minutes down the road. And they are probably one of the best farms in the UK. And I know that's just, it's not accessible for everyone. But the biggest thing I would say is like go and research your area, find a farm. Not every farm's the same. Some are great at raw milk, some maybe have really bad milk standards but do amazing meat. So find what is that farm really good at, and build a connection to that farm. Know the person, like look at the face of the person who's growing your food. There's a connection there that I think is an optimization and is a biohack. I don't know what it is, I feel so much better knowing where my food comes from and the relationship that I have with them. And also, when I go to the farms, this is also another optimization. I go and have conversations with the people who buy their food there. And it's like such a mundane thing, like going food shopping. You don't think of that as a biohack. But I'm going in, I'm getting some oxytocin, spoke to some really cool guy the other day who had these amazing water jugs that was filling up his water. Like we had a chat for like 15 minutes and I left feeling so good, versus going into this spaceship-looking, blue light, sterile building where it's so anonymous to go food shopping. And it's a mundane thing, we do it, we don't even think about it, but we're in and out, and I feel kind of crap going into supermarkets. So knowing where your food comes from is so small, but it's such a big life-changing hack.
What's the name of that app where you can find your local farm that delivers? It always comes up, I think I follow them, but does anybody know the name of that app? It's like your local farmer that'll deal with you. Shameless plug there.
Yeah.
No, there is definitely an app. You can see your local farmers who are prepared to sell to you and cutting out the supermarkets, because the supermarkets buy in bulk. That's why they get it cheaper, and it's got nothing to do with the farmers profiteering. It's to do with like mass market of factory farming. If you go to the farmer gets it, and you will also, you'll be supporting the soil, etc. But if you can, so that's a brilliant idea.
I don't want to plug it, but there is a map that I just got weirdly obsessed with trying to find the best farms in the UK. So if you type Organised and then farms, we have a map of all the farms in the UK that I genuinely believe sometimes there's things that maybe aren't that great, but there's something that we put them on there for. And when
It's probably better than Tesco's, right? Let's
Yeah,
face it. I mean,
100%,
come on,
100%.
Tesco local or a farm.
Yeah. So it's worth checking out.
Agreed.
So what's that like for you, Max? Because the US everything is 10 times bigger than it is anywhere else, especially in the food industry.
Yeah, I mean, I think people just need to take like a triage approach to their health. Like for example, I think the perfect illustration of this is like what you were saying, the 3 to 5%. Like creatine is such a great example. I actually did my high school senior thesis on creatine monohydrate more than 20 years ago.
Head of the curve.
Yeah, crazy that now creatine is now enjoying its day in the sun, but it only gives you like a 3 to 5% benefit. People talk about creatine as if it's like taking TRT or something. But if you're not lifting and you're focusing your energy and your efforts and your limited budget on taking creatine, like you're kind of missing the forest for the trees. So I try to always triage my approach through what's going to give me the most bang for the buck. What's going to help me optimize the effort that I'm putting in, because we all have like a finite amount of energy, of interest, of motivation to put into our wellness, right? You don't want wellness to be all consuming, because that's not exactly wellness, right? So I think when it comes to how to, produce your own sort of pyramid of where to expend your energy, I think the foundation should always be, minimally processed diet to the best of your ability, which isn't to say that all ultra-processed foods are bad. In the United States, we're eating about 60% of our calories. Adults consume about 60% of their calories from ultra-processed foods. In the UK, you're doing somewhat better, about 50%. But at this point, the whole ultra-processed foods equals bad idea is very low resolution. There are certainly some ultra-processed foods that are better than others. I'm personally a fan of the protein fortification of ultra-processed foods. But as long as your diet is primarily minimally processed whole foods, you're doing pretty well. You're doing way better than the average. And then from a lifestyle standpoint, I think like resistance training. I've just, over the years, the data linking skeletal muscle health, strength to healthy aging is essentially irrefutable at this point. It's so clear that the stronger you are in body, your brain directly benefits from that. It shifts the hormonal milieu in your body. It makes you more insulin sensitive. It reduces inflammation. It maintains your ability to stay mobile and to be able to exercise as you age. So those to me are I like to say, we can't major in the minors. We want to major in the majors. And that's kind of the lens through which I view, even my supplements. Like, is this going to help me achieve those goals? Is it going to help me, gain more energy in the gym, perhaps? Is it going to help me better regulate my hunger, for example? Like, is a fiber supplement appropriate for me? But supplements should always, I think, be viewed as just that. Supplements. They're not a replacement for, eating a nutrient-dense, minimally processed diet. They're not a replacement for resistance training. They're not a replacement for getting your sleep in order. They're not a replacement for mitigating stress. So that's my approach.
Yeah, I just want to go back to creatine real quick. There's obviously a huge amount of research behind creatine, and a lot of people are now, not only taking it for the muscle benefits, but also taking it for the cognitive benefits. I'd love you guys to speak into that a little bit more, and maybe for anyone who hasn't been aware of that side of creatine, maybe speak into that.
Yeah, so creatine has decades of data on its efficacy as it does for its efficacy as so for safety and for efficacy as an ergogenic aid, so like a performance boosting aid. And now there's data linking it directly to better brain health. There have been dietary surveys using large, population cohorts, connecting dietary creatine. So creatine is naturally found in fish and animal source and other animal source foods like red meat to better cognition. And from a supplemental standpoint, there have been clinical trials using creatine in everything from sleep deprivation conditions to even Alzheimer's disease. It's still very early days for that research. The story is totally still being written. But there was, which is very exciting for me personally, a study using creatine as an intervention in a population with Alzheimer's disease. And they found that in every cognitive domain that was tested, they saw a boost, like a positive signal of efficacy, that creatine was able to support cognition in patients with Alzheimer's disease. And Alzheimer's disease, I mean, there are very few tools in the toolkit for a clinician, struggling to treat somebody with Alzheimer's disease. And it was a very small trial, there was no placebo group, but it's very exciting. We need a lot more data on that. But creatine is naturally found in some of our most nutrient-dense foods. So for me, all that does is help sort of italicize the benefits that we already know is there when it comes to consuming foods like fatty fish, like unprocessed red meat and the like. So yeah, I think creatine's amazing. Is it magic? No, but is it worth integrating into your diet? Probably.
Max, did you have any because of your jet lag?
Yeah, I've been taking, that's a good question because creatine is supposed to help boost the performance of a brain under stress, and when you're jet lagged.
How are you doing?
All right. I took 10 grams today, 10 grams yesterday.
Have you ever done the 25-gram protocol?
I've not done that. The way these clinical trials work is that researchers will use at first a very high dose to see if there's like a signal, which isn't to say that a lower dose works as well. We just haven't gotten to that point yet. We see that there's a signal. We see that there's a boost in cognitive function with a very high dose. We don't yet have long-term trials to say that those very high doses are safe. We do know that the low doses are safe, like 3 to 5 grams is like my daily. But I think it's very speculative at this point to say that everybody should be taking, these mega doses every day.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've been taking it.
So creatine is obviously a buzzword in the industry at the moment. Another buzzword is fiber. And I know we've had conversations, you and I, Davinia, about this relentless obsession with fiber. I think every single food product you look at nowadays has got added fiber. You've got some strong opinions about this, and I wanna
I just think we've all been raised like Kellogg's and a great fiber provider and all this sort of thing, but I think I want to see the data on those bloody carnivores. Why do they look like Adonises? What is going on? And they're all really happy. And we need to do data on people with zero fiber. What's going on in their gut? What is their gut naturally producing from the fatty acids? And is that what the fiber was producing anyway? Was it just the fatty acids that making them look great and feel great? Reducing cravings, reducing anxiety and all inflammation. I think we can't just blanket say that fiber's brilliant. But when you put fiber in a product, you can put so many claims on the front of pack. It's great marketing. I don't have any fiber in our products, and so we can't get away with putting all these benefits on it. And there's a lot of marketing with that word fiber. I mean, I'm not anti-fiber. I still have vegetables. I'm not completely carnivore. I just think we've got a cohort there that we should be studying and going, what the hell's going on inside these guys? Because they seem to be doing okay. I mean, not all of them, of course, but it's a really interesting study to do. Is fiber the elixir of life? I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, I would totally agree with that. I think it's unclear. Fiber is not a monolith, and when fiber is used as a supplement, there's not a lot of data showing that fiber supplements have the same benefits as fiber from whole foods. There are certain fibers that do, primarily the viscous gel-forming fibers, like psyllium husk, beta-glucan is another good example.
They're hard to chug back.
Yes, but some fibers, we can't necessarily assume that all fibers, when extracted from the whole food matrix and taken as a supplement, has the same benefit that fiber does.
Exactly.
It's
an enzymatic process. There's something magic that's happening with them that we strip and then just whack it on the front of a big bag of whatever powder.
Yeah, and you're seeing a lot of
shelf.
marketing now because fiber as a supplement is a godsend to supplement manufacturers and food producers because you get to make a health claim, as you said.
Super cheap.
It costs them pennies to,
Yeah.
to put this fiber, these fiber extracts into these products. Suddenly they can make a health claim and charge a premium for it.
Correct.
And then, but conversely, like protein does have benefit in isolation. Like there's tons of data on whey protein, for example, being able to stimulate muscle protein synthesis. But I think fiber is a bit more of a gray area.
And what's this fiber maxing? I'm just like, is everyone just like
Yeah.
trying to be bloated as possible? What is that look about?
Has anyone ever here tried fiber maxing? Just out of interest. Great. So
Too wise,
There we go.
very
Too
wise
wise, too
audience.
wise.
Change the audience, you see.
I suppose on that side as well, in the UK we've got something called the Eat Well plate. I'd love, now for you to speak into that a bit because fibre is pretty high up on there, and conversely, meat and animal products are pretty low on there. How do you look at that?
Out of curiosity, because I actually didn't know what it was, who knows what the Eat Well plate is? Just put your hand up. That's not that many. It's quite interesting because this is the UK's way of how to eat healthy, and I feel like I've spoken to people about this talk, and I was looking at the Eat Well plate, and no one knew what it was. It's the pie chart that has bread and cereals, and then fruits and veg, and then protein, it's got beans and whatever. It is such a narrow lens of how to look at food,
Yeah.
because you've got on this nice pie chart a loaf of bread, and if you can imagine you've gone to Sainsbury's and you picked up some bread and that's got 50 ingredients and it's fortified with tons of stuff in it. Okay, that's one version of bread, and then you've got Margaret down the road who has been cooking sourdough her whole life, uses 4 ingredients, it's a bit of water, salt, yeast, some fermented starter kit, and she had that recipe passed down to her from a great grandmother. Like those are 2 very different things, and I think it's such a narrow lens to look at food. This is what I'm always just interested in, like where does my food come from? Like I want to know that relationship. It just simplifies everything because straight away you get this. And this is also the other benefit of not outsourcing to wearables and tracking calories and macros to tell you whether you feel good or not. Because what I've realized is when I just stopped doing all of that, I didn't expect this to happen, but I gained, and it sounds really woo-woo, but it's like this intuition of what makes me feel good, what food should I be eating. I promise you that when you dial that in, that is so much more telling than any device out there. And going back to your food source, looking at that quality, like why are we not taught that in school? I've got 4 little brothers, I've got a 6-week little newborn, and like the only thing I can think about telling them when it comes to food and health is like just meet your farmer, like make good friends with your farmer.
Well, they do teach you it in school, but it's based on the Eat Well plate, so are all the school meals. So it's like, I don't know, what is it, like 200 grams of
Yeah.
carbohydrate a day? And like,
How does that
and eat 6 to 8 times a day.
Yeah.
And we all know the impact of that. Anyone who's like, sort of like flipped, like the Americans have like flipped the food pyramid, we're still the other way around. And the thing that, on a societal level, it impacts every school, every hospital, every prison, every institution just has this monumental amount of refined carbohydrates as healthy because, hey, it's fiber. And this is the problem we've got, and we didn't have these like chronic diseases like children with type 2 diabetes pre-1977 when this mandatory, this is what health looks like, this guide came in. My great-grandmother would not have had to go to a doctor to ask, what do I eat to be healthy? It would have been intuition. We've literally handed over our human intuition of what to eat, where and when to the government. And guess what? It's not worked out too well, has it? So, yeah, I think that Eat Well plate needs to be revised, and we need to get we need to get the power back that this doesn't make me feel well, that this is addictive. This, it's not just a simple mood diary over a week. You can see foods that trigger you from one Kit Kat to a Chinese takeaway. I still do it now, If I start my day with a croissant, I'll have a Kit Kat by 11. Before you know it, and I've got a sandwich, and then I go, should we have a Chinese takeaway tonight? It's that fast for me. And it's just a gateway drug, and we need to understand what triggers you and your family as individuals. Like you say, genetics play a huge role in how we store body fat, and we need to know we're all individual, and this population law of health has got to change. We have the technology, and we have the evidence, and we have, I think, the hunger to start getting our health back and definitely changing the school system, because that's where it begins.
Yeah. On the genetics point, Max, I know you've spoken about specifically when it comes to Alzheimer's and dementia, that not as much as we think about those diseases can be attributed to genetics. There's a whole lot of other, lifestyle factors that play an important role on, whether we're more susceptible to those things. How do you think the food industry, where it's at right now, both in the UK, in the US, is making us better off or worse off with these diseases?
Yeah, I like to say that genetics don't determine your fate, but they do kind of help decide what the standard American diet will do to you. And, but I also think that a lot has been made of, we are all different. There's no one-size-fits-all diet or supplement regimen that's going to work for every single person in this room. But also I think it's a big misconception that everybody needs to take a dramatically different approach to their diet. I think it's a very profitable idea that, perimenopausal, postmenopausal women, for example, need to work out differently than women who are, menopausal. There was a study that just came out that actually tested the idea that women, should work out differently depending on where they are in their monthly cycle. And it's kind of a myth, The rules don't change depending on your age. And I think it's very similar the case for genetics. A lot of people will spend a lot of time and a lot of money spinning their wheels wondering how to best, work out or tweak their diets for their genetics. But I think, again, we can't major in the minors. We have to major in the majors. And the 80%, the 20% that's 80% of the way there, again, come back to the basics. Making sure that you're resistance training, making sure that you're eating a minimally processed diet. And then I do want to touch on, I think satiety is a really important point to take home from the diet conversation. You mentioned croissants, which are really interesting. There's a really classic study going back, I believe it's the 80s, the satiety index. Anybody can look it up. These researchers took a group of determined volunteers and basically fed them a bolus of various types of food, whether we're talking carbohydrate-based foods, protein-based foods. They found that croissants were the least satiating of any food.
Gateway drug, I tell you.
Yeah.
They are the devil. Very bougie, very chic, very Parisian.
Yeah, they do nothing when it comes to filling you up. But the food that filled volunteers up the most were boiled potatoes. So it's not even necessarily about the macros. It's about just the food matrix. It's about the constituent micronutrients, the fiber of food, and the protein content. I think that also plays a big role, the water content of food. Once you start to see food through the lens of satiety, I think diet tends to make a lot more sense.
Eggs, they're great. You have 4 eggs, you're done. That's it,
Yeah.
Do you think, because I've got a few Parisian friends, and they talk about how they'll wake up in the morning, they'll savor their croissant, and then they're fine until much later in the day. They sort of approach it with this mindset of, not yay, sugar, gorge on it, but there's an appreciation for the food. And I wonder if that maybe also has an impact on how, we respond to foods, how our brain responds to foods, with the way we're eating them.
Yeah, again, everybody's different, but by and large, the most satiating macronutrient is going to be protein, followed by carbohydrates, and then least of all fat. And the least satiating food of all is oil, which is the most calorie-dense substance in the human diet by far. So I've actually, even since in the decade since my first book, Genius Foods, came out, for me it's become looking at fat even through a different lens. Fat to me is much more, we want to think about it in terms of the quality of the fats that we're eating, but in terms of the quantity, I would say most people are probably eating too much dietary fat because it sneaks in through these invisible oils, whether we're talking restaurant foods or the industrial ways in which our livestock is being raised, but even fish is now being bred to be, inadvertently fattier than their wild counterparts. Same with cows, right? A grain-finished cow is going to be way fattier than a grass-finished cow. So I think for me, being mindful of satiety, protein coming first, you know, which is why we want to prioritize protein with every meal, make protein sort of the primary bulk of the food that we're eating, and then to fill in the edges with fibrous vegetables and things like that. But then also to keep in mind that carbohydrate-based foods we've long demonized, and I think that carbs are actually like a wonderful food. I'm not talking about refined carbohydrates, I'm not talking about added sugars and things like that, but you know, potatoes, oats, and things like that. These are foods that are incredibly filling. And I've actually learned a lot over the past couple of years, specifically the past 4 or 5 years, really studying the diets of bodybuilders. Now, you can laugh, and it does take some connecting the dots to link, you know, how bodybuilders eat in practice to, you know, brain health and warding off conditions like Alzheimer's disease. But bodybuilders have long mastered the art of deriving enjoyment from their food, but not making their food so palatable that it runs the show. And if you look at the diets of any, like if you go to any bodybuilder diet, you know, in prep for a contest or whatever, you're gonna find more white rice than a Chinese restaurant. Like they're eating lots and lots of carbohydrates because those carbohydrates by themselves tend to be very satiating. So yeah, that's, I think, where most people should, you know, focus their efforts. And that is the lever by which these GLP-1 drugs work. It's not that they're magic, they just make food more satiating.
Yeah.
They slow gastric emptying, they reduce food reward, which I think is really important. It's another thing that bodybuilders just, you know, intuitively know to do. Yeah, I think there's a lot to be learned from that field.
I see you getting riled up.
No, I'm like the opposite of that. I've tried all the overnight oats. I've tried the white, brown, every bloody rice, every quinoa, every flipping whatever thing you can get in brown. And I find it's the opposite. So for me, when I'm tired or I feel flatline, I will reach for more. So rice will, like an oats, they'll flatline me. And they're great if I'm in a state of anxiety, so, or I just want to just like switch off. So I kind of like flip how I eat, and it's just trial and error, and some people won't get on with it, but I fuel with fat during the day with coffee. I'm ADHD anyway, I'm low on dopamine. So I really find that sharpens me up, and then I sort of like lean into that cortisol spike in the morning. If I chuck oats on that, I'm screwed. I'm just like in no man's land. So I literally have trained myself over the past sort of 10 years to just put a bit of collagen in my coffee, a little bit of MCT, bit of butter, old school raspberry, that sort of thing. Whiz that up, and I'll have a few of those throughout the morning, and then I'll have like bone broth, with MCT, with some fatty acids in there, some salt, and I will stay in this sort of fasted state, and the adrenaline, like ketones, will be pumping through my brain, giving me sustained energy until the night, and I don't have any hunger signals. I'll like literally skip lunch, bearing in mind I was a snackaholic. I mean, could not walk past prep without getting something shiny, and basically I can like just obliterate the whole day work-wise without even sort of like being distracted by lunch or snacks. And then when it's time for the kids to come home, that's when I introduce really heavy carbs. That's when we've got all the sourdough, that's when we've got the root meat and 2 veg, and we've got the soups and everything, and then everything calms down, and I'm not as shouty, and and it's like rehacking that mood, you know. And if I do want to eat, I will go for eggs and meat, of course, like protein. But if I introduce carbs, it's like I've got a hangover, and I'm like, really, I can't be arsed with anything. I'm so and I'm miserable because I've like flattened myself out. It gives those, for me, that's why we have to do N of 1. Carbohydrates during the day do the opposite of satisfy me. They get me on the Kit Kats. And then we all know what happens after that. It's the croissants, it's the takeaways. It's wild how different we all are.
Yeah.
But you know, that's just trial and error. And I don't know if that's just because I'm on the spectrum. I think we all are, and that's another discussion. And it's like whatever rocks your world for the situation you're in, you know. But I mean, I'd love to have overnight oats all day and have a really nice time and get on, but I'd just be flatlined and I get nothing done. I'd go to bed and watch daytime TV.
Yeah, I think it's also about learning how to manage. It's a dance, right? Like how to manage your own response to food reward, which is like an actual term that, you know, neuroscientists, obesity experts use to describe the level of dopamine, basically the dopamine hit that people get from food. And it's like, you know, if you take something like a boiled potato, again, the top of the satiety index, boiled potato on its own is very well behaved, but the minute you add butter to it, it becomes something else entirely, right? Or the minute you slice that potato into little thin crisps and you fry the crisps in oil, right?
Put it in a bag
So
with
it's
salt
like-
and vinegar.
Yeah, you add salt to it. So it's like, it's figuring out how these different food combinations, which is, by the way, what ultra-processed foods are,
For sure,
right? It's a
for sure.
combination of sugar, salt, fat. But I think what's interesting is like we can reverse engineer why it is that those foods do to our brains what those foods do, and realize that sometimes we're able to recreate many of those effects in our own kitchens, right? It's like taking the boiled potato and then putting the sour cream or the bacon or the butter on it. Similar with white rice, like white rice by itself, again, everybody's different. I'm not, negating your experience with rice, but like rice by itself to me is pretty well behaved. The minute I dump curry sauce on that white rice,
Game over.
suddenly it's like game over. I could eat double the quantity of rice,
Yes.
So it's just like learning your own response to the various reward factors that different foods and the combination of foods.
And I guess it's knowing yourself, because me knowing me, and I'm just a complete and utter addict, in and out, I can get addicted to anything. I just need to know where I can look forward to something, so I will look forward to a big meal and cozy food later on, so and that'll give me a boost anyway. I've got something great on TV, the kids are coming home, debatable how restful that's going to be, but I've also got a massive roast dinner, and there's something to look forward to. If I start treating myself at 7 in the morning, like where's the end game for the day? Where's the, at least I'm doing that tonight. I think we need, because we just live in a world of constant reward, don't we? I mean, you just walk down any high street, you can grab whatever. I mean, literally, even in Starbucks, it's just a joke how much dessert is out under the guise of a protein bar. I mean, you must see it must drive you mad when you see like these protein bars and yourself, you're in the game, you just think, all this like processed soy, load of sugar, and they put protein on the front. There's like about 4 grams of protein in it and 45,000 grams of saturated, disgusting fat and carbohydrates. You're like, turn it round.
Yeah.
And it's really triggering, as you can see.
So it's we now. It's wild. We now have like protein-enriched Pop-Tarts. I don't know Pop-Tarts here, but it's 5 grams of protein in a 200-calorie Pop-Tart. I'm like, in what universe is this a high-protein food? This is crazy.
How is this conversation we're having now, does that change the way you think about how you're going to raise your son?
Yeah, it's so interesting because I think of how I was brought up, and my mom gave me the standard diet, as most people did. Growing up in like late 90s, early 2000s, just ate the standard diet, and my skin when I was 18 or 17, 18 was terrible. I had the worst acne, I went on Accutane, pretty much just like no confidence, was a shell of myself, and I've gone through this whole journey, I've tried everything, and I found something that really works for me, and works for my family. My mom's now on this diet, or this way of living. And it's so interesting because I don't feel this resentment or like, why did you give me these foods? Because if you haven't had the information, we're kind of speaking about it, so
Yeah.
if you have not been given the information, especially early 2000s, there is no access to the internet like there is today. Like, how would my mom have known? That's just literally how she was brought up. And you have this trust in the system, and definitely would have been more so back then than it is today, that surely people don't have bad intentions when they're giving us food, but they do. And a lot of this, I've been looking into like the business side of this, it's really interesting. With supermarkets, or with any company, there's a founder, and that founder has an idea and something they want to bring into the world, and they start it, and then inevitably they either get ousted, or they lose interest, or they die, or whatever, and the business keeps going on. Like, every supermarket has had that, and the founder is not there. Like, there is no one really driving a mission of this Sainsbury's, or mission of Waitrose, like whatever it is. There's a CEO whose job depends on absolutely maximizing the profit every single year, and when you do that for 50 years, like, the only way that you can maximize profit is to take out good ingredients that maybe cost a little bit more to replace them with cheaper ingredients. And we're just in this place where it's just gotten so bad, and it's kind of all coming out now. We're all starting to figure it out. I'm so grateful that I'm just in the position that I'm in, and I've tried loads of things, and I've gone through it all, and I've seen how it affected me, and I see how good I feel now, and I don't even think about what I eat, I just wake up and eat it. And I think that's the biggest blessing that I can give my son, is for him to just have this knowledge and this education. And I think it's also quite important to say that it's really easy to be on a high horse and say, like, why are you eating that crap? Like, what are you doing? And but you have to have this empathy. And I think that's something I really want to instill in him, is to not look at other people and try and point holes in what they're eating, but actually just almost shine as like a beacon of light. And this is how I eat. I feel fucking amazing eating like this. And I think it's like the way that you put yourself out there, and the people that are like tuning into that and want the help will find it.
Well said. We were just talking before we came on stage, because I've got 4 kids, and the first 3 I ate just normal, like my husband's in, going out getting me McDonald's and everything, do you know what I mean? And I was just like, I just didn't know, because the doctor just said, just make sure you're eating for 2, you know, and just make sure you just keep your calories up. So I'm like, happy days. But number 4, I discovered the paleo diet, and I started eating more paleolithic, and weirdly, number 4, he's 10 now, he doesn't go for junk food, he's not got a sweet tooth, no Haribos or anything, and he'll just have a steak, and he'll leave all the bread, but the other 3, I'm afraid, are like me, and they'll just like grab anything, you know. It's wild how that message, and I don't know how it works, epigenetic, what it was, and I don't know if it's just luck, but the youngest one doesn't have the sort of same propensity to overeat junk food like the other 3, and me, because I was raised on rusks as well. So, you know, it's wild. I mean, I'm like, so hats off to you and your lovely girlfriend over there. And congratulations on the baby, it's gorgeous. But the knowledge you have, boom, it's literally gone into his DNA. It's wild, fabulous.
Yeah. Max, you talked a lot about the Hadza tribe in Tanzania, who are one of the most studied examples of ancestral living, like we're talking about now, you know, just going back to real nutritious basics. What can we learn about their diets that we can apply to, you know, our modern lifestyles, like living in cities like LA, London? Yeah,
I mean, it's a good question. The rates of chronic non-communicable disease are obviously skyrocketing now in societies of abundance like ours. And so I do think that there is a lot of wisdom to be learned from these more ancestral dietary patterns. I think the problem with, you know, the paleo moniker is that it tends to take on a different definition depending on what part of the world we're talking about specifically. We all have different genes. I mean, you know, my ancestry is from probably Northern Europe somewhere, and I spent a lot of my time in Los Angeles and Las Vegas, where, you know, I mean, I burn, and so like trying to adopt the Paleolithic lifestyle in Las Vegas, for me, that's not very smart. And so I can only presume that adopting a dietary principle that looks like the paleo diet from one part of the world is, you know, maybe not as smart for my genes. I mean, the Paleolithic diet for me, or for some people, might involve coconut oil and, you know, isolated fat extracts that are, you know, more saturated in nature, for example, whereas my ancestry might have, you know, used primarily like dairy protein or dairy fat rather, or, you know, oils or fats from various fruits that are less saturated in nature. So, I mean, I just think it, like, you know, when we apply labels to these dietary patterns, I think it then can take on a dogmatic tone that I think doesn't really suit the individual at the end of the day. So I implore people to not give their name a diet, their diet a name, and instead to just view themselves as these, you know, sort of N of 1 micro experiments, as Davinia alluded to, you know. And your diet, your needs are going to change. Your needs are going to be different from the person sitting next to you, and they're going to change over time. So I think, you know, we have to not be dogmatic, to use dietary guidelines as templates, and to not be afraid of drawing outside of the lines, because at the end of the day, you know, what works for you might not work for me. That being said, science, our scientific apparatus, has paved a path towards, you know, understanding how foods affect satiety and things like that. And so, you know, we want to use that data to our advantage, but not to allow, you know, these more dogmatic tropes that, you know, we all see come across our social media feeds these days to become shadows. You know, that's when I think it can become counterproductive.
Yeah. And when I guess another thing, like we said, GLP-1s now part of the conversation. Society is a big part of what they do. How do you guys feel that the influence of GLP-1s is going to change the way the brain evolves, the way humans think?
Well, it's interesting because the power of food to satiate you has ripple effects that lead into every aspect of your health and well-being. I mean, the GLP-1 drugs work by boosting satiety, in part. They also work by reducing food reward. A lot of people that are on these drugs report, having the sense of food noise that they experience being turned down. And that's really great, not just for helping you to maintain a better body composition, but we're now seeing this emerging signal in the literature that they're also helping to reduce risk of cardiovascular events and maybe even conditions like Alzheimer's disease. We don't yet have all that data yet, but I think we can reverse engineer those findings and use them to our advantage when it comes to, how we might engineer our environments, right? Our dietary environments and the like. So I think it's all really cool, and it's all pointing to, I think all roads are converging to the fact that body composition really does matter, that there's no organ system that doesn't benefit from a healthy body composition, from healthy skeletal muscle, from low levels of visceral fat, from a appropriate waist circumference, good metabolic health, and the like. And GLP-1s are kind of like a fast track, showing us what that does over time, because getting people to sustain weight loss in the wild without drugs has just been so monumentally difficult, just because we've inherited these environments that are by and large ultra processed. But the GLP-1 drugs are great because they kind of strong-arm people into weight loss and weight maintenance, and we're seeing the results of that when it comes to risk for chronic disease and negative health outcomes and the like. So I think it's really cool. That being said, you don't need to be on one of these drugs. You can kind of reverse engineer it yourself, learn about nutrition, learn about satiety. And so I think it's you've got many tools in the toolkit to it. I think there are fewer excuses than ever before to not be in the best shape of your life.
Davinia, what are some of your...
I just think it's wild how we've had to create a drug and we still won't acknowledge the environment that it's come from. The fact that the authorities, the powers that be, like the big 5 food companies that own so much of our choice, have orchestrated a mass addiction to processed food, that you need to jab yourself with something that overrides your dopamine pathways and can literally interrupt your mood and your ability to fall in love and feel joy. That's what they've done over the past, like I said, from the Eat Well plate, like in the 70s. As soon as they got control of our palate, look what happened. And it's just like this ongoing thing, and it's like this miracle drug. Yeah, but why did we need a miracle? Why did we need that in the first place? Because those bastards got involved, that's why. And they've profited off all of us. And, and it's all a treat, go on, treat yourself, every single frigging day. And I can't stop treating myself because I'm addicted. But the doctors won't acknowledge it's a bloody addiction that they orchestrated. And here we are. And for me, it winds me up. I'm like, acknowledge what you did and help us do it naturally. But no, it's okay. We've got a jab for you. And we don't know what's going to happen to the brain. I mean, I know you can lose muscle mass, I know you can use bone density, and we can build on that. What is happening to that most precious thing? Because I've lost my brain to addiction before, and it's hell. So what is that going to do over the next 10 years to your dopamine pathway? Are you just going to be nothing? No joy, no ambition, nothing, but you're thin. So, I'm like, it scares me.
Yeah.
Well, it's all just like... I just think it's all algorithms, It's like the social media algorithm feeds you what you want, what you tend to like, right? We love to complain about the algorithm, but it's really just feeding you what it is that you're seeking out.
Now I got these new shoes.
And what you're paying attention to. And it's like, the food environment has become crap, right? Like 73% of the items in your average supermarket are ultra processed, but it's that way because that's what humans like to eat. You know, like food manufacturers they're just trying to provide delicious food, tasty food. And I think that's where you have to have a little bit of like self-control to be.
But you can't control addiction. Once you've crossed that invisible line, you can't go back. It's hell, honestly. And you know, I mean, some people can moderate. I've not moderated anything since the day I was born. And it's like, you know, finally people are acknowledging that there's a population problem, and you know, it's not the minority, it's the majority now. Like you said, 50% of ultra-processed food is our diet. It's a mass problem, and it's a shame that we can't just see it for what it is. We've been conditioned for like 2 generations. My great-grandmother wouldn't have recognised anything. You know, I mean, we don't do stews, we don't do gravies from stock anymore, we don't boil on the bone, we don't do any of the basics, you know, and I think that's the problem. And like going back to from the beginning, get the basics right, and that's what it is. And we've just been told, it's all right, Bista will sort you out. It's just sugar.
On sugar, what do you think is worse, sugar or social media?
God. Probably sugar, because I'll flatline and then go straight to social media. They work in tandem, don't they? But what do you think?
What kind of sugar are we talking?
Oh yeah, the white stuff.
The white
stuff,
stuff, not the raw honey.
I think a little bit's alright. It just depends what you're doing with the rest of it, and like if you have a little bit, are you then gonna take? Is it a gateway for you? Like, do you then go and have a Chinese takeaway? Social media is pretty fucking bad. I'm like, I can't be on it, and it's like a portal, and I'll be on it, and then suddenly like an hour's gone, and that's especially with a newborn. Like I want to be spending that time with him. So social media for me is way worse.
Max?
Social media is pretty bad. I mean, I was like being fed just like thirst traps from like, you know, I was like, I don't want to see that. And now it's all just like jacked, shirtless dudes, and I'm like, you know. And then I have this morbid like medical curiosity. So then, like, if I see somebody with like, you know, 3 arms or whatever, I can't help myself but click into that. So now my explore page is all people in third world countries with like limbs coming out from every which direction. It's like really bad. So I would say social media.
It's gone dark fast, right?
Yeah.
And it does, it gets dark quick, eh? I mean, I find it's a bit of a curse because we can share information and we can like get our point across, but I end up getting my point across and then end up arguing with like strangers for hours till 4 in the morning, and I'm like, what am I doing here? But I've got to have the final word, you know? So for me, yeah, it's a guilty sin, and you know, I can really get myself in trouble, and I do every week. And I'm working on that. First step is that you've got a problem. I got a problem with arguing with strangers.
As we end this, I want to just get very practical for a second. If anyone in the audience here is thinking about, you know, what foods are the best for me to eat for my brain, if you guys can be very specific of what particular food items you would recommend for cognitive health.
Well, I mean, it's hard to pick just one, but I will say, because I feel like I'll probably be the only one naming it, I'm going to say avocados are sort of an unsung hero of brain health. Avocados have the highest proportion of fat-protecting antioxidants of any fruit or vegetable. They're a fruit, they're made primarily of fat, and because nature has imbued avocados with so much fat, they've also imbued avocados with a huge proportion of fat-soluble antioxidants like vitamin E, lutein, and zeaxanthin, which are carotenoids. So berries get a lot of love typically when it comes to what is the best fruit for the brain, but actually I would say avocados are probably the best fruit for the brain. And there was a study that found that avocado consumers compared to non-consumers scored better on all cognitive domains tested. So, you know, when they ask you at Chipotle if you want the guac, it's going to cost you extra. It's an investment.
The brain.
Yeah.
I'd probably say beef and coffee. Not necessarily together, but yeah, because that would be horrific. But yeah, I definitely need that sort of caffeine buzz in the morning just to get my brain going. And yeah, and for me, I'd always go for, if I'm in a restaurant, I'd always go for a steak, you know, grass-fed, obviously. obviously. But yeah, that for me is the easiest thing to do, and probably not a filler, probably like on the bone or something like that. Yeah.
Why on the bone?
Well, it's just more, it's tastier, and it appears to be more nutrient dense, and you can get up the marrow and everything. So yeah, I like a fattier cut as well. Yeah, it satisfies me more. But then sometimes a side of fries and it's all yeah. You know what it's like if you go out, you know. But yeah, I try and eat in because otherwise temptation.
The brain needs fat, so it's any healthy fats, obviously avocados, fatty cuts of meat, eggs, butter. You can't beat organs as well. And this is something that I thought was quite interesting when I was looking at the name of this talk, of thinking about the brain. It's like, how can we optimize the brain? The brain is part of the body. It's like, if you're optimizing for the brain, you're probably optimizing for everything else in the body. And organs are some of the best things that you can eat. And I think the other just little bit to tack on is cooking stuff yourself. Because when you go to cook yourself, you don't want to put shit ingredients in your food. Like, you're not actively going to find ultra-processed stuff to put in. You've got so much more control. It might not be perfect, but like cooking your own food is going to have a much greater output. It's just a little bit extra effort, but the reward for me is just incomparable.
I can't wait for you to have 4 kids.
Yeah.
I will come back and see you.
We'll see.
Family style servings at your house. Well, thank you all so much. It's been lovely to talk to you.
Thank you.